Welcome to episode 63 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. My name is William Fitzpatrick, and folks, I'm doing a little bit of a celebration today. Hangouts on Air is going away on August 1st, and this will be the last of the Hangouts era episodes of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling until I can get some things changed over and do some stuff, some experimental stuff with the podcasting things. Wacky World of Wrestling has always been at its very heart an experimental podcast. I never expected to get tens of thousands of views doing this show. I never expected to get any form of pride or recognition or anything like that from this particular show. I do this podcast because it is a genuinely fun experience for me to do, and there have been occasions where there have been ups and downs, there have been triumphs and failures, but always throughout 2013 to now, Wacky World of Wrestling has always been an experimental podcast for the, well, unusual creativity that I happen to have when doing these shows. I want this podcast to be a podcast that people can listen to, that the entire family can listen to. I don't swear. I do jokes, but I don't do them as obsessively as, say, many others in the wrestling podcasting field. I mentor people. I mentor people into doing podcasting because I believe that podcasting is a healthy method for them to get out all of their personal issues and interpersonal demons out of their system so that they feel more whole. I believe that wrestling podcasting can be healthy, contrary to the people on Twitter who scream constantly at the people who are not wrestling podcasters but are instead shock jocks, and they want that shocking reaction. I believe that pro wrestling podcasting can be healthy for people, as I've stated beforehand, as the same with professional wrestling. So, to see professional wrestlers and wrestling fans and personalities and the rest all attempt to feud with one another over various, what I consider to be quite trifle things, is incredibly baffling to me, to put it mildly. But we shall look yonder at the summer Sengoku of wrestling to see what exactly is going on this time. Because there's always something going on in the world of professional wrestling on a weekly basis. Talent getting busted for drug problems, concussion problems becoming more prevalent, promoters skipping out of town with the money, and so on and so forth. So let's start at the top with WWE, because they've had the most interesting off-season of summer. Yeah, the Seth Rollins experiment hasn't really worked out the way that they anticipated, despite Captain Hoarder over there, Triple H, saying otherwise. Seth is currently in the infirmary, being beaten within an inch of his life thanks to the WWE social media team paying Brock Lesnar in a large amount of bison dollars. Because apparently, when you lose in a Twitter feud to Will Ospreay, the WWE social media team decides, yeah, Brock, here's some free Jimmy John subs and a bunch of money that's actually bison dollars. Go beat Seth Rollins to a literal pulp. Speaking of which, people are beginning to figure out that Becky Lynch's champion is not exactly working out the way that people intended. She was supposed to be the shimmering golden goddess, put your hand down, Mandy, that was supposed to lead this division into the future. Instead of realizing that she's a one-dimensional wrestler and cannot work with any of the wrestlers who are inexperienced because she wrestles way too fast for them. She ends up in a 3-month feud with Lacey Evans. Yes, because everybody else got injured. Nia Jax tore both of her ACLs. Tamina ended up injured. Anybody that you would have thought of for cannon fodder for Becky's run to be solidified as legitimate, unfortunately, the entirety of the cannon fodder ended up getting injured. And because the rest of the pieces are far too important for long-term development, they decided in this particular instance to have her feud with Lacey, the top prospect from NXT, because Hunter doesn't want to give away any of his other wrestlers for some reason. Thus lies the massive problem that's going on between WWE and NXT. NXT has gotten into hoarder mode, signing every single indie wrestler because of a certain person from the Never Realm unleashing his horde upon hordes of wrestlers to destroy WWE. I'm going to talk about them in a little bit, and I think you may have figured out which promotion that is. So, WWE finds itself in a situation where it is now in this financial freefall. It's like a screaming roller coaster, only they forgot to put down the last of the tracks. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoy crashing and burning into the 7 levels of HE double hockey sticks, because that's where this coaster is going. And it happens to be shaped like a handbasket. Wow, thoughtful. So, yes, WWE, I've talked about them before, but they are in a bit of an issue. At least the Bailey Ember feud is doing reasonably well. I know people are getting upset that they haven't been pushing it as hard as they can, but look, take it easy with this feud, see how it develops. If Bailey steps on a PBC anime figure, it will probably lead to Ember unleashing her Super Saiyan mode, and well, we're probably going to need a new SmackDown Women's Champion. And a new ring and a new arena from the crater that has developed at that point in time. From Ember's Rage. Yep. I tend to usually think like that, don't I? So, who is the competitor that has Vince McMahon in a panicked mode, where he has literally turned his fingernails into nubs? Well, it's because of his little fantasy football league that he's unleashed his worst possible competitor. No, not AEW, the NFL. The NFL took notice of Vince McMahon, Satan himself, and his fantasy football league, and is quite upset. Since they don't have the Alliance of American Football to punt around like a football, they are going to instead Lucy the XFL. And Vince McMahon is Charlie Brown. And by doing so, they decided that they are going to crush both of his little businesses at the same time. Because Roger can't pick on Jerry Jones this week, he's decided to pick on the other old man in the room, and it happens to be Vince, who got in the wrong meeting room. Because Vince has got a lot of pressure right now. Not only has his son, who's just recently celebrated his 50th birthday, invested in a number of markets that are very high risk and very low reward, like Britain, and the rest in his foreign global expansion plan. This is probably not going to work out the way that you think, guys. Not with the number of governments that are currently going through civil wars or are about to go through civil wars at this point. It's shocking when Saudi Arabia looks like the most sensible investment that you've made. Yes, the people that regularly execute others. Although I am just at this point waiting for them to back off of the deal when they suddenly realize that Vince is as insane as their tribal warlords are. And that Vince will probably be drinking blood out of a human skull at some point. Because knowing Vince, he's probably going to think of it as a funny joke. Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting time of the year for WWE. Your best investment is the one that you're keeping in the side pocket of your books. George Barrios is now getting protected by Vince because he's been a little bit incorrect on some of his investment predictions. He expected grand and glorious profits for Mordor, continuing to fuel the flames of fire as it is the world's most dominant wrestling promotion in the land. Thing about being a global wrestling promotion, and of course not falling into the Ponzi schemes of selling gold bars, is the fact that you are in a much more vulnerable situation. And the NFL, and by extension, Shao Kahn, realized this. And they targeted the American market. The American market that had been dissatisfied with WWE's programming, that had been dissatisfied with them turning into literal WCW. All they needed was a spark. And thankfully, that insane cult down at Full Sail provided a spark for them. When Hunter decided that Cody Rhodes was not going to be interfering with his little Isengard project. Cody Rhodes gets upset, asks for his release, and WWE does the stupid thing and grants it. They expected that he was going to be back within the safe confines of Mordor, of that literal hellscape, for years to come. Instead, Cody discovers a new passion on the indies, allies with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, and proceeds to decide to start a wrestling promotion. Oops. Not only that, but he has Tony Khan to thank for basically being the investor in this situation. Once again, his dad, who is the official president, and him being the CEO, and Tony Khan being the CEO of this situation, have decided to act like the Mongol horde and literally invade the strongholds of WWE. Is it no surprise that the first TV taping of AEW's new show on TNT is going to be happening in Washington, D.C. at the Capital One Arena? You know, the old stomping grounds for Vince Sr.'s promotion? They are definitely sending a very clear message here that they are going to wipe WWE off the face of the planet, or at least reduce it to a certain degree so that it is now more in line with the NWA promotions, or at least the false NWA promotions. The original Donner Party of Pro Wrestling Impact that has now become the official promotion of the Canadian government, and Ring of Honor, who keeps imitating the New York Knicks for some reason with personnel, business decisions, and wrestlers going into the stands and intimidating fans for not being a fan enough. Yes, the Bully Ray hire is looking now more and more questionable by the week. They now have job openings, though. Either people decided that they had enough of the situation, or Sinclair has suddenly realized that they are suddenly no longer the craziest people in the room. AEW has sent a very clear message, and despite Hunter's near consistent pick hoarding, like an NFL general manager trying to save his job, instead, many of the indie wrestlers who saw through the facade, realized that they could get paid large amounts of bonus money for signing with the competition, have signed with AEW. Well, unless your name is Gunnar Miller, and then you can go to social media and start complaining about the fact that Marco Strunt got signed over you. Yeah, you're a Carolina wrestler, dude. You don't fit the style AEW is trying to promote at this point. Marco's a better fit. That's what I'm going to say on that particular matter. From a perspective, they've tailored their roster to basically be the equivalent of an NHL expansion team. That's at least what I'm thinking of with AEW. Many of the pieces are either extremely overcooked, have one functional ACL, or are guys that are trying to develop themselves. People say, well, MJF is a future star. He's 23 and he has ankle issues. Not yet. We need to see a little bit more from this guy before we begin proclaiming futurism on him. Futurism is going to be one of the biggest dangers of this Sengoku period, and it has proven itself time and time again. Do not look towards the future. Look towards the here and the now. Look at what Beyond is doing. They're finally living up to their potential for the first time in 10 years. 10 years is also exactly the amount of time that this promotion has been active. Taking a risk with uncharted territory, a concept that actually is rather plausible. A weekly indie show at a rec center. That seems relatively practical and a relatively good idea to fill up space at a venue, at least. And in season 2, which they announced is starting in October, they're going to be they have a purpose-built arena for doing episodes of Uncharted Territory. Okay, good start there. Good start. Now do something about your financial issues, and maybe you'll continue to go for the next couple of years. And maybe also start thinking about financial stability in this situation. And maybe thinking about getting wrestlers who are not tied up with various different indie promotions. These alliances are as shaky as best, and they're probably going to be a situation. There's probably going to be a situation or 5 when they go full Ronin, and then suddenly you end up with a bunch of dead samurai. This is the summer of Sengoku of wrestling, and AEW has made a clear message. Beyond has made a clear message. How's everybody else doing? In short, they're on fire. Wrestle Circus finally went into the way of the great clown shows in the sky and shut down. Once again, taking advantage of the overeager and the dreamers of the pro wrestling world to try and set up something in Austin. How difficult is it to set up a wrestling promotion in Austin, Texas? That market is so hipster that it has literally succeeded from the rest of the 10-gallon hats. That's a market that should be a slam dunk for pro wrestling, and yet this is a market that has regularly caused a lot of trouble as far as venues, ownership, and financial issues. I guess even the Donner parties are bigger in Texas, and Wrestle Circus has certainly proven that. The Mid-Atlantic is continuing to cook up the laughs, with the latest being the Gunnar Miller incident. of him complaining on Facebook about Marco Struck getting signed by AEW. But the Mid-Atlantic has been, well, to put it mildly, a territory that has been one of my favorite territories to look at this year from a Donner Party perspective. And yes, of course, I am talking about both championship, about the CWF Mid-Atlantic and Nova Pro, one of my favorite promotions of the year. And yes, I do not say that unironically. This is a promotion that for some reason decided to spend gobs upon gobs upon gobs of money, most of it involving credit cards, to bring over one-hit wonders, independent random talent that proceeded to not get paid. Oops. Your stars that you're trying to develop for the future are pushed way too gosh dang soon and are not given the adequate amount of support that they need in that situation. Your ring crew is either getting paid in ham sandwiches or not getting paid at all. And I shouldn't even get started on the corruptive influences of the Willy Wonka wrestling school of pain and terror that is Shakara. Anytime that Shakara makes an agreement with any indie wrestling promotion, you should probably get your baking crosses out in holy water and hope to the gods that Mike Quackenbush and his insanity doesn't corrupt the promotion or cause it to overspend money. Well, of course, he's putting his students in $4,000 of student loan debts, but then again, basically, the Wrestle Factory, and by extension, Chikara, has basically become Penn State University. I am waiting for the inevitable sex scandal to happen, and I'm going to basically put my hand in front of my face and say, oh, Pennsylvania, can you not stop with the nonsense already? Can you stop with the nonsense already? As you might have noticed, that I'm a very passionate individual when it comes to independent wrestling. I have a tendency to think of indie wrestling with a much higher standard than I do with most of the so-called corporate promotions. And no, I don't have any form of bias or evilness against corporate promotions. I understand corporate culture relatively well. I understand from a business perspective on how they act. People tend to complain or yell about the ethics of corporate promotions, but when you see the ethics of the indie hipster promotions, you suddenly realize as to why they have those policies in the first place. Yes, indie wrestling is getting better. There is a slow, marginal climb into the world of, well, the modern era, the here and the now, the present. Either wrestlers or personalities, fans and media people are either stuck in fantasy land or they're stuck way too hard in reality instead of the present. I don't technically believe in pushing for the future, nor do I particularly believe in pushing for the past. I believe in pushing for the present, the here and the now, the what we are doing at this point in time. Whether it is a success or a miserable failure is something that has to be determined when we actually get to it. Too often, I see people oftentimes proclaim greatly on social media that the world of professional wrestling is either changing and doing things that it hasn't done yet. Again, patience. When it actually gets to that point, you will know it. When it actually does those things you want it to do instead of being in some fantasy world, then it will be. Balance and perseverance are the key. Not looking down at the grindstones or listening to the legends of the past, scoff at tales or territories that do not exist or do not exist in this preceding 5 years. You can go back to those days, but you're going to need to be very practical, have a bit of common sense, which is a common theme that I oftentimes tend to notice is not present in pro wrestling, or look at things from the perspective of, okay, we managed to get to this goal today. We've done good. Now we can reasonably set some goals and expectations that we will know will happen. And even if they don't, okay, at least the sub goals will be reached. You got to think of wrestling sort of like a Xantos gambit to a certain extent. Even if your main plan fails, your sub plans will at least have some potential estimate chance of succeeding. And when I look at what's going on this weekend in pro wrestling, I can't help but be a little bit happy. On Saturday, August 3rd, I'm going to a wrestling show. Southern Tier Wrestling presents Irresistible Forces at Sherman, New York for Sherman Days. Sherman Days is a harvest festival. It started in the 19th century. The merchants started up the festival to sell off excess goods and harvests that they had sold for the year. The festival almost folded in 2017, but the locals were resilient enough to want to keep it going. And for the last 2 years, the festival has continued. For the first time since the carnival fair days of, I believe, the roaring 1920s at least, pro wrestling has arrived in Sherman. And boy, folks, you are in for a wonderful card. There have been many announced matches thus far, the two biggest being a heavyweight championship contest for the Southern Tier Wrestling Heavyweight Championship between Big Time Bill Collier and the Destroyer of Everything Terrell Kenneth, a submission match between Invincible Miss Valor and Brandon Thurston for the STW Fireheart Championship. Indie wrestling, for all of the complaints that have been labeled in the last 15 to 20 minutes, is doing relatively well. There are some great success stories. Uncharted Territory just wrapped up its first season today. And while I do have certainly concerns about their long-term financial stability and their partners not suddenly imploding like a submarine with the engine bay put in reverse, there's hope to be positive in this situation. I just feel as though that the emotions between both positive and negative are so out of whack at this point that we really don't know. There's no middle ground that I see in pro wrestling. You've got people like Jim Cornette and Jordan Grace feuding on Twitter over gimmicks and characters. You've got people who are traditional wrestling fans acting like modern people, and you've got those who scoff at the traditions doing traditional things like conning people out of a t-shirt because you say you're leaving the indie scene but are actually staying. Looking at you, Joey. Looking at you, Joey Ryan. Oh, gosh. Traditional wrestling people have the problem of wanting to stay relevant and current within the era, but they get so overwhelmed by everything. You might have noticed something here. Key word or phrase, emotion. I tend to be a very unemotional person about things. While I do have my passions for pro wrestling, and while I do want to talk about pro wrestling in a reasonable, logical fashion, I am also not a person that gets excessively emotional about things because emotion leads to a lot of bad things happening that you don't want to have happen. But those things do happen in a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've talked about this before on Wacky World of Wrestling, and one of the key themes I want to stress on this final Hangouts era show is that you are in control of your own destiny. As a fan, as a wrestler, as a personality, and as a writer of this sport in this sacred ring. You don't have to follow a pack, but you also have to coexist with people. And I think that that's one of the biggest issues we're running into now is the coexistence thing. Comedy wrestlers and traditional wrestlers are the same. They're both relics of different eras, and they both are failing to coexist with one another because they believe that their philosophy is better than the other. Instead of realizing that both of them are suffering in different ways and that they should actually try to help one another for once. If a traditional wrestler wants to learn comedy, but a comedy wrestler decides to give him the middle finger, is that really helping anything? Likewise, if a comedy wrestler wants to improve their grappling technique, but a traditional wrestler has to say, well, you gotta earn your dues or something like that. Guys, paying your dues, as I've said beforehand, is a union term. Most of you ain't in a union. And those that are in an unofficial union called the Boys Club, which I don't necessarily believe in because, again, you are independent contractors. You are in my realm. I've talked about this before, but I work as a professional independent contractor in merchandising. I've done so since 2005. While I am not a pro wrestler myself, I do understand the ins and outs of independent contractorship. I understand the non-disclosure agreements. I understand everything that has to do in that field. So I understand pro wrestling contracts relatively well. You're paid a lump sum or some other form of payment in advance. in the case of a performer that is performing live on a stage, in this case, a wrestling ring. You have a bunch of promoters that basically contribute a small pile of money in that particular situation. As we saw with Nova Pro, that backfired so spectacularly that the tire fire can still be seen in Virginia. And the only reason that the promotions in the Middle Atlantic are doing well right now is because ownership is now an 80-foot tall sentient giant crab monster. Yes, the Chesapeake Bay Crabs are better pro wrestling owners than the actual humans. Congratulations, Crab Wrestling of Maryland, for doing the right thing and letting a crustacean run your wrestling promotion. I don't know if this is indicative of the rest of the pro wrestling world, but you might notice that my eccentric sense of humor about this sort of thing says volumes. I trust the inanimate objects more than I trust pro wrestling promoters. I trust, well, inanimate objects more than I do most people, to be quite frank. And this is not out of a sense of insanity or craziness in this situation, but really more of a fact of the reality that pro wrestling is a business that for some reason has this innate ability to try and repeatedly stab itself with the carny roots. I don't believe in the carnival fairs and the smoke and mirrors. You gotta be honest with people these days. You want them to buy a ticket to a pro wrestling show? You gotta be honest. You want them to come into your pro wrestling hall? Gotta be honest. You want a family-friendly atmosphere since you're running a family-friendly promotion? Well, guess what? There's a code of conduct on the door that the rec center does. I don't believe that wrestling promotions themselves. Now, this is the important key thing here. There should be a rules and regulations list, but the code of conduct policy should be followed based on the venues. Again, it strengthens the symbiotic relationship between the venue and the promotion. It brings good relationships in that situation, and you want to have good relationships with your partners in this form of business because it is a business at the end of the day. You can claim it's art, you can claim it's a business, you can claim it's something, some kind of interdimensional five-dimensional wizardry of some kind. But again, at the end of the day, it is a business. It is a business that a lot of people get into because of desperation. Some people are pro football players that blew out their knees that need something a little bit easier to use their athletic talents for. Others are artisans who want to do artistic artwork but don't know where to start and end up in this athletic field of pro wrestling. The wrestlers have gotten smarter, and as much as people hate to admit it, the fans have gotten intelligent to it as well. But the fans, they shouldn't know all the ins and outs. They're the ones ruining pro wrestling. No, stubbornness is ruining pro wrestling. Arrogance and pride is ruining pro wrestling. The 7 concepts of the 7 deadly sins are the reason why pro wrestling has struggled in certain markets over the years. Conniving deceit, backstabbery, stabbing this. All those things have hit pro wrestling like a ton of bricks. And if you're a general consumer, they ain't marks, kids. They're general consumers. They're interested in your entertainment, but you have got to be, as I've said a couple of times already, honest with them. Be professional business people in this situation. Do not con them. Do not connive them. Do not belittle them. They understand your business, and that is completely okay. Because, quite frankly, there is a very limited number of you at this point, and more of you are passing to that great big wrestling ring in the sky per day. Whether it be addiction, DWIs, or just some plain accident that happens, pro wrestling is losing a lot of different people over the years. When an obituary of a pro wrestling basically covers an entire phone book because of all the things that have happened in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, you're going to need people to fill in those spots. Or people quit and start families. Or people quit and just because they've been burnt out because they've been betrayed and backstabbed so many times. I understand that many a wrestler has severe paranoia because they're always looking over their shoulder and wondering when they are going to get conned because people think of them as marks. I don't think of anybody as a mark or smark. I think of them as people. people first philosophy here on Wacky World, and I've always strained to say that virtue. And while people will say that I'm a overly virtuous, overly snarky, contrarian who is irrelevant, a lot of times I've noticed a lot of the philosophies that I believe in and preach regularly here on this here podcast oftentimes get used by people. And that is completely by design. As I've repeatedly said beforehand, unless somebody is throwing a ginormous dump truck of money in my parking lot and wants me to go right professionally on a wrestling promotion, I am going to stay outside of the curtain. I know what's inside the curtain. It's not pleasant. It's not something that at this point in time I want to deeply dive into. Do I have interest in writing for a pro wrestling promotion? Certainly. Do I have interest in possibly running one in 10, 20 years' time? Certainly. And I'll say those things outright because here, it's the last episode of the Hangouts era of Wacky Worlds of Wrestling. And while I will be returning to doing the world of podcasting in a month or so, this podcast really is sort of a bookend of what contributions that I have made over the years to the world of pro wrestling. And I haven't banged my chest or yelled screaming at the heavens, hoping that I would be brought into one of these cliques or cults. I've done it all independently. I took opportunities, I took ideas of doing things and seeing if they worked out. I got a wonderful opportunity to meet many different people talking about the world of professional wrestling, bringing people together when I did Cage Side Speaks as a co-moderator. I was so happy about that because I was lost in the world of pro wrestling. I didn't know what to do. I was seen as some irrelevant contrarian whose jokes never hit, who oftentimes didn't believe what other people were saying in that situation. I got an opportunity to do podcasting and I was able to find my voice for the first time. I was able to get healthy, you know, not dealing with sinus issues or strep throat or influenza or a flu or some kind. And while my health has been affected doing these particular podcasts, I have recovered enough to stoke the fires of talking about the world of professional wrestling in a cognitive, intelligent, reasonable manner. And that's the thing about me. I'm reasonable. If you do good things in the world of pro wrestling, then guess what? You're on the right path. You're doing things the right way. But there is no set right way for doing things. Be aware of that. If you're adaptive and if you're modular and if you know what the heck you're doing and if you're professionally trained, there are many avenues that you can go down in the world of professional wrestling that will suit you. Hopefully, it will be the most positive ones for both you, yourself, your body, your significant other, or anything else that happens to you down the road. For me, I took the most non-linear path imaginable. I did co-moderation for podcasting for about a year and a half, 2 years. Helped a lot of people. Made a lot of people's lives better. At least I think so. And I went off and did my own thing. I did Wacky World Series 1 and Series 2, and I'm now doing Series 3. Yes, there have been ups and downs. Yes, there have been disagreements. Yes, there's been triumphs and tragedies. But it's all something that I have generally enjoyed doing. And, well, as you might have heard in the tone of my voice, I'm feeling well. I'm feeling good. And I'm wondering exactly what that next step in my life of pro wrestling is. But before then, I got an indie show to attend to. In a nice little small country town. In the middle of nowhere. Seeing something that both me and my family enjoy watching. Well, I take my mom. My dad can barely stand crowds when going to these pro wrestling shows. And he doesn't really like pro wrestling himself. But again, he understands it. He got stuck on a boat once with Randy Savage. And he was the crazier of the two. Yes, my dad managed to out crazy Randy Savage. And to a certain degree, as I've talked about beforehand, I feel like I feel that pro wrestling has helped us in ways that it never expected. If pro wrestling didn't come in the most ironic way into my dad's life when he was living in Florida back in the mid 1980s, I wouldn't have a father and I wouldn't exist, to be quite frank with you. Because he'd be dead. He'd be a statistic of 1980s Florida. But they got him on a boat. He was a professional tour guide. They got him on a boat, got him away from the bars, helped him change his life around. Pro wrestling, as known as it was destructive as it is, and it was incredibly destructive in the 80s with all the drugs and alcohol, managed to do something right and managed to save a person. That showcases the healing potential that this industry has never really understood that it is capable of. And it is capable of doing such good things. With the rise of fuel prices and with the rise of other costs, pro wrestling events are going to be seen as a viable alternative method for many a community rec center or venue to host instead of an auto racing show or some kind of event involving large amounts of something or other. And with pro wrestlers understanding more about their health benefits and risk, they're tailoring their styles to be less destructive to their bodies, and they're being smarter about things. No need to push yourself 100%. Even going 95%, you're still getting a crowd captivated with yourself. And you don't have to do a hold and a grapple. You can just do something. Anything can make a person go, wow. Just make sure that it's tailor made for that audience and you're not doing something offensive that's going to cause an entire riot to break out. Some of you all are way too obsessed with killing the town. Because literally, you can't promote in pro wrestling again, unless you put a bouquet of flowers together and a massive money apology suitcase full of money. Then you probably can come back. Look yonder at the summer Sengoku of wrestling. Look yonder at the chaos, the carnage, the traditions, and the nuances being all twisted together in a massive hurricane of carnage. Look yonder at those who are smart enough, agile enough, and cunning enough to actually dodge and avoid the chaos of the masses feuding against one another for trivial petty means. Look yonder at the Sengoku of wrestling. Look yonder at this new golden age of pro wrestling. Look yonder at the Ronin standing in the center of the monastery, hands clasped, wondering what his future will be in this world of professional wrestling. Because as I said before earlier, I have no idea what my future in pro wrestling is. I, at this point, am an independent. An actual, true independent. Yes, I've been associated with pro wrestling sites before, like Cageside. Yes, I have been associated with various different writers and personalities. Any of them will tell you he's doing his own thing. He's not really connected with us. He does his own thing. He appears, he does things. He either does things that will make things much better, or he'll make things infuriate for those who are egotistical enough to believe that they should rule over an entire wrestling universe when they don't have the responsibility or wherewithal to realize that they're getting, well, worked by the fans, but instead goes down on his own path. And while some people have been incredibly frustrated over the years with my defiance of independence, I feel that that has helped me, and I feel that it has saved me from a lot of perilous, terrible things. Not being involved with a group and not being involved in collective has helped me. Keeping my distance, observing, and wondering what the next path in life for me as far as pro wrestling is concerned is a very interesting thing. I'm not a person who considers himself self-centered. I like helping people. I like making people's lives better. Because as my mother said to me, you were put on this earth to do good things. You were not put on this earth to do horrible things. Okay? She says to me, and I believe her. I've taken her at her word for the last 27 going on 28 years of my life. And I thank you all for watching this podcast over these last 63 episodes. This is a celebration. Yes, there are hardships and nightmares ahead, but there's also good things coming. There is good stuff in pro wrestling that is hitting everywhere. You just need to know where to look. As I've said beforehand, I don't know where my future lies. I know what I'm doing in the present. I've got 2 tickets to a wrestling show. I know where I'm going to be in August. But in September, I'm not really sure. And that's the fun part, the unknown. The unknown scares a lot of people in pro wrestling. The possibility that things will change to the point where we'll be utterly unrecognizable. Change scares people. It even scares people who are pushing for change because it might not be the change that they actually are looking for, but it will be the thing that they fear will happen inside their mind. A self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. But look yonder at the summer Sengoku of wrestling as it turns to fall, as things start heating up. SummerSlam is usually seen as the peak wrestling season for oddball angles and weird stuff happening. Well, a lot of stuff's happening. A lot of pieces are moving around. A lot of things are jumping back and forth. Certainly, we'll hear a lot of more conflicts and clashes and other parts of insanity as my cat has just jumped off the table. But I look forward to covering those things. Not right away, mind you. This is the last day of Hangouts. I will give some time to contemplate some thoughts. Who knows? I might start writing about them a little bit more. My future in pro wrestling is uncertain. I know I'm still here. I'm still a fan of the arts and the entertainment. And I'm twiddling around 2 tickets in my hand because I know what I'm doing at this upcoming weekend. Tier Wrestling presents Irresistible Forces, Saturday, August 3rd at the Sherman Central School Gym. It is in Sherman, New York. Doors open at 1. Bell time is at 2 p.m. There are 7 to 8 matches scheduled on this card, and I am personally really looking forward to it. To see what kind of madcap madness my local indie wrestling promotion can bring this time around. I mean, heck, I'm watching an old school submission match on this card. That's fun. As is the heavyweight brawl. Hopefully it doesn't leave the entire town into a crater, but knowing Bill Collier and Terrell Kenneth, it might. But look yonder at the Southern Sengoku of wrestling. Look yonder at the conflicts. Look yonder at the insanity. Look yonder at the madness. Look yonder at the theatrical insanity and the chaos that has sprung forth. You wanted this. You wanted change. You're getting change. But it's not going to be the kind of change that you expect. Talked about that before on a past episode, but it really is sticking the point home done this particular weekend. I also want to give a shout out to those of you who are attending the Scenic City Invitational this weekend in Tennessee. I want you to have all a really good time. Be safe. Don't overdo it. Because the last thing I want to hear about is a car getting crashed into a third story of a hotel. Because somebody thought that jumping off of a ramp was a good idea. Have fun. Be safe. Those wrestlers, wrestling personalities, media, and other people and fans who are attending in Tennessee. And, well, it's 10:53 p.m. And I've been talking for well over, I think, 30 minutes plus or so, and I think we will probably be ending the show here relatively soon. Let me check to see if there are any. Oh, we got ourselves a little bit of a technical difficulty here. Hang on 1 second. The live events tab has decided that it's gonna goof up here for a second. Okay. Yep. I'm not sure if things are still working or not, but hey, technical issues always been a kind of a staple. I'm really thankful to everybody who I've ever done a show with on podcasting related things over the last several years since 2015 when I started using Hangouts as a podcasting tool. I'm really thankful of the things that have been done or have yet to be done. Okay, the thing is back. I'm going to be checking on the if anybody is actually listening to this show live. And it's still loading, still loading. And I've managed to do 64 episodes, and half of those, and most of those episodes have been done on the on this particular app. Okay, 0 watching now. Okay, that's fine. So this was overall just an overall look at the world of professional wrestling, and this may be somewhat of a more disjointed show than usual that I do on these episodes, but I thank you all for watching this edition of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling, and anybody who's watched past editions of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling as I do this, what's looking to be a 45 minute long show. And at this point in time, I will probably be returning back to podcasting in September at the very least. I'm going to take some time to do some experimental episodes of podcasting, see if I can find something that works in this situation. For those of you who are about to ask, as I've said on the past couple of episodes, no, I am not doing Twitch. Okay. I'm going to wait and see what kind of options that I have available that I can do on my own instead of just jumping into the mosh pit that is Twitch streaming, which seems like a very alien and very freaky thing that I have very little interest in being a part of, even though I've done several episodes of Shooting the Breeze with Taker and Senju on the Twitch platform. And it still felt weird. But yeah, I will likely be back in September. I'll probably be taking most of August off from podcasting just to adjust to the new things about the realms of podcasting. I feel like it's a good time to do some things differently. But anyway, like I said, I got an indie show to get to this weekend. And I thank you all for watching this edition of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. You can follow me on Twitter at William Fitzpatrick. That is FIZZPATRICK14 on the Twitter handle. I somehow have over 70 people following my account. That's a bit odd. But I never have expected much success. I've never expected much in the way of actually being able to contribute to the world of professional wrestling because I have relatively reasonable expectations. And my modest expectations has led to this being a relatively modest podcast. For those 15 or so plus people who actually watch this show, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back in September or so, and I'll see you then. But until then, this has been Look Yonder at the Summer Sengoku of Wrestling, episode 63 of Fizzy Wacky World of Wrestling. Have a good day or night, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.